Hi, friends. I'm your host, Polly, with the Time to Speak podcast. And in today's episode, we will be discussing something very sensitive. So we want you to know right off the bat that if this has been something you've experienced in the past or are facing now, that you're not alone. We encourage you to please watch the full episode and to know that there's hope and healing and forgiveness available through Jesus. So please help me welcome my guest, Jenny Foster. Thank you so much for being on the call today and for you taking the time to share with our audience. And this is just going to be phenomenal. I would just like to start with you sharing a little bit about yourself and just let us know who you are, some of your past experience. I know that you've got a pretty amazing reputation in abortion healing, and I'm just really honored to have you on as a guest and maybe even a little bit nervous.
Oh my goodness. Well, I
But
feel the
we're
same
gonna
way.
handle that.
We are. I feel the same way about you in my mind. We refer, all of the people who come through our program resources, we refer them to you, to your ministry. And I'm just so grateful for you being an artist. That's certainly not a gift that I have. And the work that you do is really sacred space. And so I'm feeling the same way, a little starstruck today.
Oh my gosh. Well, share a little bit about yourself, Jenny. We'd love to learn more about you.
You bet. I currently live north of Houston, Texas, and we moved to Texas about 5 years ago from Seattle. So we were in Seattle for enough of our lives that we really call that home.
Mhm.
So we were called really by God to just take this free fall and leave our church of 20 years and all of our besties and move to Texas. We didn't have total clarity on why. It's become clear to us, of course, now looking back that he was actually calling me into ministry and spoke to me after we got here and said, I brought you here to start an abortion healing ministry. And I was like, okay, Lord, this isn't just about my husband. This isn't just about me. You have plans. And he's just really blessed us here. You know how it is if we walk in obedience, he very quickly, like a good father, says, let me rain down blessings on you. Thank you for trusting me.
Wow. Yes.
So that's where we live and where we're from. We have two girls together. We're a blended family, which for anyone listening in a blended family, we know that that can be one of God's greatest gifts and miracles, but also one of the most difficult things to try to blend a family. But because Christ was at the center of our marriage and our family, I have to say our daughters have triumphed over so much, and they are beautiful grown women, very successful in the world academically and in other ways, but they're just beautiful, good, solid people and have married wonderful guys. And I'm just in the waiting to be a grandma here next month. So I'm
That's
so
awesome.
excited. Yeah.
I'm excited for you. Being a grandma is pretty cool.
Oh, I cannot wait. It is just going slowly because I'm like a little kid waiting for Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Wow.
thrilled. I'm thrilled. So it's been a journey. I mean, anything else I did? I probably was very generic there, where we're from. My husband Dan is amazing. He's been in risk management for 35 plus years.
Wow.
He's a
Okay.
rock solid, godly man. My first marriage was very painful, very difficult. And sometimes you wonder, how is the Lord going to redeem this? But my husband was worth the wait. And I just don't think I even would have been mature enough in my faith walk or my understanding of being a child of the King that women should be cherished and we should be cherished and loved in our marriage. And I don't know that I could have received what a rock steady, godly, a compassionate and patient man my husband is, had I not actually walked through some pretty difficult things.
Wow.
So
Well, it sounds like he's an amazing guy, and
he is.
congratulations on what, 36 years?
20 years. Dan and I have been
20
together
years.
20 years. Yes.
20 years. Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
because there was a first marriage in there, but yeah, it hasn't been easy, but it's really nice to be at a place in your life where, I'm approaching grandparenthood, and our marriage has definitely been seasoned in the hot skillet, many, many times. And you just feel like, oh, I can just rest in the fact that my husband and I are solid and good, and we can really take on, whatever's going to come our way.
Yeah,
And our girls are equipped, and I think are making their way back, and will make their way back to where they were with the Lord. And so that's our prayers, just,
yeah,
you know. So we're just proud. We're proud parents, and um, I was not, I guess I could give you a little background on, I wasn't raised in a Christian home overtly, and was raised with actually a lot of confusion surrounding religion, and of course not really having exposure to a
yeah,
personal relationship with Christ. Um, I went to Catholic school all the way through, but wasn't Catholic, so I was on the outside looking in, and that's
wow,
hard as a young person
yeah,
because you want to be in that just to fit in with your peers. And my grandma was Presbyterian, and my other grandma was Methodist, and then I was a daughter of a hardworking mom who had a really amazing career. So, summers when you're working, I went to every summer camp of every denomination that exists, I'm pretty sure. So, what was a blessing about that was to have exposure to all those
yeah,
different faith practices.
right.
Um, but at the end of the day, my life really didn't come together until Jesus reached out to me and met me in a really dark place. And my life, of course, has been radically different since then, having that one-on-one relationship. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
So
totally.
good. Yeah, so good. He's so good.
Yes. Well, you have a very unique type of story that unique in the sense that we typically don't hear. Oh, I've not had many guests on that have a story like yours, Jenny. So I thought it was so important to share your perspective with our audience and with me so I can even learn more about um, that whole process that you went through. So, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be honored to. I want to completely agree with you that we're going to venture into talking here briefly about medically advised abortion,
Yeah.
and that is a community that until more recently really had no voice
Mhm.
publicly, and now still has a very quiet, very selective voice. Obviously, it's painful. All abortion is traumatic and painful, regardless of the situation. But that's a part of the community I found myself in. So I'll take you back to the year 2000. I was in my first marriage. We had a little girl who was 2, and we were expecting our second child. So very excited, and we found out he was going to be a boy. And how neat. They would have been kind of a really ideal distance, and one boy, one girl. How perfect.
Right.
So anyway, this is in 2000. We went in for like our 16-week ultrasound, and we were so excited to find out he was going to be a little boy. And then things just got weird. The tension shifted in the room, and the tech, left the room, never a good sign, and came back with 2 other white coat doctors. At the time, I didn't know, one was a neonatologist, radiologist, and one was
Mhm.
an MD, and I thought this is not good. So then they proceeded to tell us that there were some serious issues, with the pregnancy with our baby. The first was like a kidney issue, and they were like, well, there's a really large cyst on his kidney. And of course, we're thinking, well, nowadays, even in 2000, they can fix that. That'll
Sure.
heal. Surely there'll be
Yeah.
something they can do after he's born. But then they proceeded to get into the heart issues, and there were 2 very serious heart defects. Um, just completely missing the septum between 2 of the 4 chambers, and the other was partially developed, but it was really, really bad. And of course, things are different now. You always wish you could go back and say, wow, I wish I had been carrying that child during a time that some of the interventional surgeries they're able to do now to help babies even in utero, or after the fact. A lot of babies have been born since then that
Yeah.
have had maybe one of his 2 cardiac defects and have had surgery, and are doing well. So, I try not to go there. That's not a healthy place to go there. What's
Yeah.
happened has happened, and it's in the past. They also suspected some type of cerebral malformations, possibly something with the head and brain. And so with all those things combined, they immediately, like that very day, are standing there recommending that we terminate the pregnancy. And so I was not yet walking with the Lord. My husband was quite an impassioned atheist and a scientist. And so we just had really grown up that doctors were kind of at the peak of, they're on a
Yeah.
pedestal, and
Right.
whatever the doctor tells you to do is probably the right alternative. So we left there, of course, devastated, in shock and denial and confused, like what is even happening? We go in for a happy day, and we're leaving, and they're saying you need to end your pregnancy in the second trimester. So we took the weekend. They wanted us to make a decision very quickly, so we did feel a lot of pressure that if you don't make this decision to terminate very soon, it's going to get a lot more complicated if we wait a week or two until you guys come to terms with it. So number
Right.
one, we were only given one option, which was, and they'd never used the word abortion. It was to terminate the pregnancy for medical reasons.
Right.
Um, and there was a sense of urgency and a lot of pressure. So it's not like we were praying together, we didn't have
Right.
godly counsel around us to even suggest, what if you were to just wait and carry this child to term? Because I didn't know the God who maybe could have healed, our
Yeah.
son. It was just a whole different thing. And so that's the community of people. It's been a while since I've talked about the statistics. So these are a little bit old, but around 2018, the number was 120,000 families in the US per year receive some type of poor prenatal prognosis, whether it's life limiting or mild, and are facing that decision of, do I continue the pregnancy or do I terminate the pregnancy? So it's actually a bigger number than I think some people are aware of. Not all of these people are married, but there are plenty of couples like my husband and I who this was a very wanted pregnancy, a
Yeah.
wanted baby. Nursery plans are being made. You're excited, and to receive a diagnosis like that and a recommendation to terminate, I can't. I can never fully express what it's like. Abortion after the fact, regardless of the circumstance, for most people comes with regret,
Yeah.
pain, trauma, for most of us, shame, guilt,
Yeah.
regret, those kinds of things. But a lot of people over the years have said, Jenny, you really don't fit in the box of someone who had an abortion and should feel condemnation. And you're okay. You kind of get a pass because your situation was unique, because your son had serious health issues. But what I've had to explain to people is that I walked through having kind of all of the more common feelings of regret, shame, loss, grief, but there was this whole other layer that came over the top of it that compounded the grief, because this was a child I loved and wanted. So,
Yeah.
how could I make that decision being married and this is a wanted baby? It made me feel even worse that I would be the mother who would say yes to ending my child's life. If does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it was
Just,
awful.
yeah. Just literally trying to wrap my head around that whole experience and just like, I mean, I'm just even taken aback, like thinking about the position that you and your husband were in, people who are in that type of position. And one of the things that I picked up out of your book, this is her book. We'll talk more about this a little bit later. But one of the things that sort of just jumped out is, I spent years feeling confident that we had spared our son pain and premature death. And I think that's one of the major lies that the enemy uses,
Mhm.
that we think we're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
Um, it makes sense in your mind. I
right.
mean, you're doing the most compassionate thing,
Mhm.
right? That's what we think. That's what we've
That's what we
been
think. Yeah.
taught to think.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead. I'll continue with your story, Jenny. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, that's thank you for bringing that out. That's what they kept calling it, was the compassionate choice, that we were making the compassionate choice. And at that time, coming from a perspective where I was not a Christian and where I was very medically oriented, medically savvy, all I could think about was the dark side of the medical. I didn't have the idea of a miracle as an option. So it felt like we were sparing him, but no one ever explained to us what a second trimester surgical abortion was going to be like. We were obviously in such a state of shock and dismay, and I was terrified.
Sure.
It wasn't until much later in my healing that I was even able to go out to the internet. It was painful. We have to go through the hard to get to the healing. But
Yeah.
once I finally went and read about what on earth did this really entail for my precious baby, and realizing what we know now that we didn't know as much then, that,
Yeah.
our babies do feel pain at a certain point in development. To me now, I mean, the enemy absolutely lied to me. It was the
Yeah.
least compassionate thing we could have done.
Uh,
If we had been walking with Christ and had put that life into his hands, I know that our Lord would deal with that child in the most compassionate way.
sure.
So it was rough. We went through the surgery, and then I had a lot of health complications after that. I was not healing. I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And my pain, abdominal pain, female reproductive pain, it just kept getting worse and sharper and miserable. And so I went on antibiotics. It's been so long. I can't remember if it was like 3 rounds of different antibiotics, because they assumed it was a post-surgical infection. And no one even did an ultrasound to confirm. And so this is where there's a little bit of fogginess in my memory. I know it was at least 2 months, maybe more, possibly up to close to 3, that I walked around in excruciating pain, trying to, be present and cheerful for my sweet little toddler. And finally, I had to advocate for myself and say, something is really wrong. And
Mm.
I'm not a really assertive, like push kind of person, but I realized now it was God giving me strength I didn't even know I had. And I said, I need an ultrasound, like now. And so I got an ultrasound, and that's when we unfortunately learned that the abortion had been incomplete. And so, I don't want to make anyone cry. So if you're in a sensitive place, maybe pause right here. But we found out that they had literally left close to half of my precious baby inside my body. And I had to see that on the ultrasound monitor. And that was a real turning point for me, having to then go back to the same hospital with the same OB, the same operating room, the same nurses, and basically repeat that whole surgical anesthesia, process of surrendering him again. And that ultimately, afforded me a diagnosis of PTSD, which, thank the Lord, I mean, I'm so marvelously healed from that now. But that was a very long process of managing PTSD symptoms and flashbacks and a lot of the things that can be
Right.
common with abortion trauma. Yeah, it was just awful. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Obviously compounded it again. So then there was another layer of compounded grief on top of
Oh my
that.
God.
So
Wow.
yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
Walk us through, Jenny. Walk us through like making that decision and coming to terms with, okay, they've already given you all the the facts of what they found, and their recommendation is very compelling. And so you're in that position and you're like, okay, yes, this is the most compassionate thing we can do. How do you take that next step of, okay, this is what we need to do? Like how does a person come to terms with that? Do you just convince yourself that they have your best interest at heart, and you, like you just said in the book, I mean, we really do believe that this is compassion, because that's what we've been taught. And
Yeah.
We really do believe that we're doing the best thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, can you share a little bit about that?
I think everyone's different. I've had the honor of meeting a lot of families who have walked through this, and the compelling difference to me is I've met families who are Christians, and because they were walking with Christ when they were facing that decision. They put their trust completely in the Lord and carried those children to term. Two of which that I can think of were Down syndrome children who are beautiful and precious
Yeah,
and can do so much more than they can't do, and have enriched their families beyond words. And so I think that, well, I don't think, I know that my decision would have been different if I was where I am with the Lord
sure.
today. I
Yeah,
can't go back in time and redo it. But my state of mind while we made that decision was was a lot of detachment. There was so much shock,
yes.
and I
Mhm.
immediately moved into a place of fear and anxiety, just
Yeah,
terror that if it's going to be this bad, then I want it to end.
yeah,
Um, I mean, just I remember being angry, and I remember the yellow, cute little button-down maternity shirt I was wearing. I remember just going back to my bedroom and just ripping it off and the buttons just flying because I just wanted to basically reject it. And I think I write about it in the book, but I really let the enemy condemn me for so long that how am I even better than a mama dog who has a litter of puppies, and there's one that is special. There's one that there's something wrong, and in nature she knows, and because we went through that with a litter of puppies, and she would just keep pushing that one out of the whelping box and kind of even knock him off the side. And I couldn't stand it. We just kept cleaning it off and putting it back with the mama, and we ended up bottle feeding it and all of those things. And the enemy, I mean, just came after me so hard. I'd always thought I was a good person. I'd always lived by integrity,
yeah,
loved people well, been a compassion person, and the fact that I could do that. But I went to probably a place of just total shock, and all I can explain is
yeah,
trauma. And when you have a child, and you have to be strong for your living child,
yeah,
I think a lot of us as mothers know that you can be going through something horrendous one day, and your baby comes in the room and is hungry, and you're like, okay, sweet pea, let me go get you some cheese and prepare your lunch. We really can go on autopilot.
yeah,
So it was very numb,
yeah,
leading up to the one thing that put me over the edge was with the first surgery before his life was ended. I was about 17 and a half, pushing 18 weeks. So the records say that. And then I thought it was our 16-week ultrasound. We must have been a little late. But all I know is I'd been feeling my son, the quickening, and my son moving
yeah.
around for a couple of weeks. And so
Wow.
to be feeling his sweet little movements
Yeah,
all the way into putting myself on the operating table volitionally,
yeah,
that's when I broke, was right before the anesthesia, and started crying. I want my
wow.
baby, I want my baby, I want my baby. And at that point it was too late. So yeah, that was the most painful thing, was knowing he was alive and fighting up to the very
Yeah,
end. Yeah.
yes,
I'm sorry. I hope
yes,
whoever heard that is okay. Just pray
yeah,
God's balm
yeah,
of comfort over you right now. Yeah.
yes, yes. Let's take a moment and just let's just kind of regroup. And again, if you are, you know, sensitive to this topic, take some time to take a moment to just breathe
Hmm.
and take a moment, put it on pause. And yes, it is a difficult topic.
Hmm.
It's something that is not talked about too much.
No.
We don't know a lot about it. Even being in abortion recovery, it's still something that is, it's still different in some
Yeah.
ways. And I think that's what Jenny was alluding to when she says you're almost trying to find your tribe because it's not quite this and it's not quite that,
Hmm.
but I'm in this different position. And so that's what we want to bring out so that we can be a resource and show you that there are other people that are in your position
Yes,
And there is help available.
there
There are
is.
support groups that are available, and you really aren't alone. And even if you just need prayer because you're in that decision making process, that
Hmm.
there's help available for you. And
Yes. Yes.
we will be praying for you too if you are in that
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's a really interesting dynamic that you brought up, Jenny, is just like, where's my place? I mean, I know that even even when we're doing our work and we are sharing about what we do, sometimes there's a little bit of but but why are you allowed to grieve if you did this intentionally? And
Exactly.
like if it's a miscarriage, then you have, yes, we want to give you flowers. We want to acknowledge that you lost your baby through miscarriage, but
Yeah.
and you're allowed to grieve. And sometimes people that go through miscarriage don't know that they're allowed to grieve.
Yes.
And so there's all these different dynamics swirling around. And I think that's such an important key thing to bring out, is that there is a place for you, and
Hmm.
everybody is allowed to grieve no matter what the circumstances is, whether it was intentional, unintentional. That doesn't even matter. What
No.
matters is that you're a human being going through something super hard,
Yeah.
and you have every right to grieve what you're going through. Nobody needs to determine if you have the right to grieve or not. You just
Yes.
grieve because you're a human. And what was that like for you, Jenny, when you started to even give yourself permission to grieve, and just like you must have just got to a place where you're just like, wow, this, nothing can be harder than this.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty unreal. Um, One of the things that I can look back now and see was Jesus had his hand over me. Like the fact it can be hard for a lot of women to think, I can't imagine that God was there with me during my abortion. Um, and I can look back now and see 100% he was. And I guess I should give the end of the story at the beginning, is just that I was starting to be wooed back to Christ, like to figure out, you know, I want to come back to Christianity, I think, but it was difficult to do with my spouse situation. And he was just in the process of wooing me because he goes before us and he knew what was going to happen. Um, so anyway, I don't want to lose my train of thought, but what was I saying? Oh, it's so painful to think that he was there with us. But now, where I am now, it's the greatest comfort that I have. You know, nothing is a secret from God. We think
Right.
we can hide our abortion story from
Yeah.
friends, from, everyone from our, especially in our faith communities.
Yeah.
Very few people feel safe coming out and sharing their story.
Mm-hmm.
And this has never been me coming against pastors, but they're in a difficult position to
Sure.
try to figure out where they're going to stand on abortion, or do they
Absolutely.
want to stay out of the politics? And so what happens is there's so much silence from the pulpit. There's so much silence within the faith communities from church leadership. And when you are sitting in a pew and you've had an abortion, that silence is interpreted as shame. It basically reinforces that I haven't been able to tell anyone, but I'm never hearing anything about abortion healing. Like there's a divorce care group I can go to. That's wonderful. There's a widow grief and loss group I can go to at my church. Um, we have Celebrate Recovery. We have all these different ministries and support groups, recovery groups, and these are all good things.
Yeah.
Substance abuse, I want to see all of them in our
Yeah.
churches. But there was this piece that just continues to be largely missing for
Right.
how do we help women who've had abortion? Because you and I know the statistics. It's one in
Yeah.
four, sometimes as high as one in three. And
Yeah.
those statistics are the same inside and outside the church.
That's right.
So when we go into Sunday service, putting our best self forward, wearing our best outfit, or trying to help our family look, our kids, we can be arguing right all the way into the parking lot about them putting their tights on with their dress. but we want to walk into church putting our best self
Yeah.
forward. Please just ask the Lord to open your heart to realize that you are sitting likely in a row with another woman or more who have been through abortion and hasn't told basically anyone. And
Right.
that is a horrendous place. And that's where obviously the enemy wants to keep us stuck, women and men, stuck in those shackles of silence and shame, because then you can't break free, you can't be healed, and you're less effective for the kingdom. You can go to
Right.
church every Sunday, but until there's healing, you're
Right.
being held back like with a bridle, and it's hard to receive God's calling on your life or where he wants you to serve, or because you're just stuck. Um, so I know I just went down like three different rabbit holes. Can you bring me back to where you wanted me to go,
Well,
Polly?
I don't know where we're at.
I'm just letting the Holy Spirit lead. I'm like, whatever, Lord, just whatever you want to share with the listeners.
But
Oh,
you know what I'd like to ask just for my own understanding is, do you when did you notice you were able to call what happened, what you experienced, an abortion? Because
oof.
I'm sure there's another word that people use to make it
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
So when were you able to get to that point where you said, that you had an abortion? This was an abortion.
Oh, sure. That took a long time. Two things. The first part happened quickly where I was confronted with it when my insurance, health insurance explanation of benefits, which is like your claims statement,
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
the claim came through for the surgeries and then they waited and there was a second surgery, when that those claims started coming through, one of them actually said, they have a diagnosis, procedure codes, all that medical coding. It said abortion on my insurance statement to figure out like what part we were going to pay and insurance
Yeah.
paid. I remember where I was in my house on Bainbridge Island, Washington, when I opened that. And I just remember thinking, I've got to call them. That's wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't have
Yeah.
an abortion. I had a
Yeah.
medical procedure.
Right.
So I honestly was not really able to say the word abortion until God called me to write the book in 2018 and the writing began. So we're talking 18 plus years before I
Wow.
could actually say to people who started to become trusted confidants, I had an abortion. Now here's why. Let me justify. Let me explain. Here's the
Yeah.
context.
Yeah.
That was so, it's amazing the power of denial that we can stay in denial on
Yes.
all or some of our healing for, and I just will throw this in, having the honor to be an abortion recovery class leader and to walk alongside women who are, and men, I just work with women, but our ministry works with men as well.
Yeah.
But to walk alongside people who are going through that, oh, I'm gonna get teary. Some of the women in our class, have had an abortion in recent years. I'm thinking of my last two classes. We had young women in their 30s who had a very recent abortion. In the same class with women, two of them had been 39 years since their abortion. So we actually see it's pretty common for some women to not deal with their abortion for 10, 20, 30 plus years, and of course, sadly, some never at all,
Yeah.
especially without help from our Savior. So, um, I'm a very type A person. I was a straight A student, and so right after we went through this traumatic experience, I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I love books. So I scoured, the bookstores. The internet wasn't quite as vigorous as it is now,
Yeah.
trying to find everything I could read about neonatal loss, grief. There was like nothing written about medically advised abortion, absolutely nothing. But I got onto an online community with the dial-up AOL, and
Yeah.
there was a group there that was in this situation where you're making a decision for medical reasons. So everything I could get, I read. Everything I could engage, I engaged. Every resource I could find, I did it. I bought the necklace, I bought the jewelry, I immersed myself in all of it. And I did study grief deeply in the early years. I got
Hmm.
an A in grief, but I wasn't really doing it with Christ until about 2009. And
Yeah.
in 2009, I invited Jesus into the healing experience, realizing that each year, as I would recognize that anniversary and feel the grief and struggle, I wasn't getting anywhere
Yeah.
until I invited Jesus into that journey with me. And oh my goodness, that's when everything started to shift and change. And I could feel his presence with me, just it was amazing. So if you're not walking with Jesus and you're dealing with grief and pain of any kind, boy,
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
encourage you, talk to someone who you can ask questions and open your Bible. Just you can start today just saying, I don't know what to do with you, Lord. I don't know much about you. I don't know how to read the Bible.
Yeah,
Please send me someone who might mentor or disciple me.
yeah,
Um, but I promise you, you will make leaps and bounds of progress
yeah.
when you invite him into that healing.
So was it around that time, Jenny, when you felt like the deception starting to break, that there was this breakthrough, like,
Mhm.
wow, okay, what I thought happened, it's totally different.
Yeah.
I have a new perspective now, and you're starting to see truth. Can you talk about what that was like when sort of the veil was just
Oof.
the scales from your eyes fall, and you start to realize what really happened, and
Yeah.
really the impact of our decisions that we make. What
Yeah.
was that like about for you?
So what happened for me is I had an awareness. Okay, let me just back up again. I'll try not to lose my train of thought. Thank you for bearing with me, listeners, today.
No.
Um, I had this, I literally look back and it was a supernatural experience where I could feel something was going on that was giving me strength and I didn't know where it was coming from. But right before our first surgery to end our son's life, I called the hospital, and we're talking the biggest skyscraper hospital downtown Seattle. And I called and I asked to talk to legal and who I needed to speak with because I asked for my son's remains to be turned into our local funeral. What do you call it? Funeral parlor. That's such an old word, but
More, oh, do they call it a
mortuary. I
mortuary? I
don't
don't
know
do
what they call it
I
anymore.
don't either.
Right? Okay, but the people who care for your loved ones after they die,
Right,
and
right.
their legal department was very shocked. They said we've never had anyone call and ask for the remains of. They didn't use the word abortion, but they call it products of conception. We've never had
Was
anybody ask for that.
did you ask for that after the first surgery or the second surgery?
I asked for it within days of going into the surgery because I did not want our precious little baby put in a medical waste and basically thrown out in the
Yeah.
garbage. I
But the
wanted to
first
find some
time
way to
after
honor him. It
after
was
the
before
first
the
surgery,
first. Mhm.
or the second one when they had to
Well, that's a little
sort
bit
of.
more of the pain. It was before I went into the first one, and
Mhm.
they took a day, they called me back and they said we can do it for religious reasons, whatever, we can do it. And so within a week or two, I was able to go and pick up my son's remains, which were cremated, of course, and
Mhm.
put in the tiniest urn you can ever imagine. I didn't even know they made urns that tiny. So my reminder, early on, even in denial and not really fully understanding, like you're saying, what I had done, I had
Mhm.
this little urn with my son's ashes in my sock drawer for like almost 9 years because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. So I
Yeah.
had this like really concrete reminder of what I had done. But I was also had gone through divorce. It is common a lot of times when people lose a child, whatever the circumstances, it can be too much. And our marriage was already troubled, and that was, kind of the final blow for us. And so we did end up divorcing. So then I found myself in the early healing years as a single mom. I mean, he visited her and all those good things, but trying to make a living, trying to, put food on the table, do all those things. And so you really compartmentalize your grief. I would
Yeah.
schedule it. And so what I typically did was, I can't deal with this. I can't feel any feelings. I know my son's in the sock drawer and this sweet little thing,
Yeah.
and I've got to work. And I worked, crazy hours. I had a really intense job. Um, but anyway, all that to say, what I decided I would do is I would take one day a year. And so November 11th would have been my son's birthday. And so November 11th, I would give myself one day a year to go out to Natty's Pond, which is the title of the book, And it was just a really precious place for me where I had taken my daughter to play, and we had a little paver installed at the park with his name on it and the year. So it gave me a place to go, like what you're talking about. People who go through abortion, society really doesn't say we get to grieve.
Yeah.
But because of all that reading, right, I had done all that head knowledge on grief. I knew that it was okay for me to put some type of plaque, some type of memorialization. So I would just go once a year on November 11th. And then really my husband was a huge impetus in that 2009 shift where he said, do you want me to go with you? You go to the pond by yourself every single year, and I know you're strong and all of that, but he's like, do you want me to go with you? And I said, no. And he said, well, can you invite Jesus to go with you? And like I said, that made all the difference. Yeah. And I feel like I've sidetracked again because there's so many layers to it, but
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Let's talk about your book because all the details
Sure.
are in here.
They
And
are.
this was a turning point for you too when you started writing this book, right? It's
Mhm.
called Natty's Pond, and her baby's name, her little boy is Nathaniel, and she calls him Natty. And so, you want to
Indeed.
share a little bit about your book, Jenny?
Sure. Yes.
It's
I
a beautiful
had
book.
an amazing experience. I don't get to hear from the Lord audibly in my spirit very often, but that was my first time I ever experienced hearing from God profoundly. He woke me up at 3:30 in the middle of the night, and I sat up in bed having this really kind of out of body experience in a way, and I literally heard the Lord say to me, "Write the story." And I knew it was his voice because I ramble and am flowery and and I always find when the Lord speaks, he's a little more direct and clear and than I am. And I sat there and I said, I know what you mean. I know the story you want me to write, but I don't want to, Lord.
Yeah.
So, but the next day, I really was, because I had come to Christ. I think I've left out the biggest piece, which is that after the first surgery and the grieving that was going on and the pain and all of that, not sleeping, wandering the halls, I got up and I went to my Bible and I opened it to Psalm 91, and
Mhm.
I ended up coming to Christ. So when we think about children that are lost for whatever reason, every child, no matter how long their life is,
Yeah.
has a purpose, has a God ordained purpose. And that was one of the first things I was able to see, that even though I never got to hold my precious son, he brought me to Christ in a very difficult circumstance that was very opposed to Christianity. So I guess I didn't want viewers to be confused that I was definitely walking with the Lord at that point in the story when he
Yeah.
woke me up and said, write the story. And so I did it out of obedience because I had been learning in my studies at the time that we've got to take that first step, like Peter when he stepped out,
Yeah.
to try to join Jesus walking on the water.
Right.
God wants us to take that first step in trust, but it's just a first step. He is right there. His hand is so close, and he
Yeah.
takes our hand, and he's not going to let us fall, if we
That's
keep our
right.
eyes fixed on him. So, yeah, that was a huge step. And I said, yes. I said, okay, Lord, I don't know what this looks like. I will write the book to help others because I've always
Yeah.
had a heart to love on others.
Mhm.
And through the process of course writing it, I realized that the healing was also for me. It was incredibly cathartic. It gave me such
Yeah.
intimate time with the Lord in writing it. And so I had layers and layers of healing through the process of writing and publishing the book. So, you know how he is. He's such a good God, right? Just
Really is. He
Oh
really
man, it was
is.
hard. It was really painful to
Yeah.
write the book. And that it also meant coming out of the closet, being
That's
someone
right.
in my church who was
Yeah.
known and led Bible studies. And I put this in quotes, was a good church lady. Nobody
Yeah.
knew my story. And so I obviously had to come clean with
Yeah.
my church community, say, I'm writing a book and it's going to be published, and I want to come clean and tell you guys my story. So it was really all falling off kind of in layers around that
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No more hiding.
That's right. That's right. It's like, yeah, that. I remember having that same experience, like, oh my gosh, uh, it's just like, you really feel exposed, but you're doing the right thing because you've been called to do it. And it's the Holy Spirit totally gives you the strength. Otherwise, we'd never do it. We'd never
No.
publish anything because we're just too scared to be seen and
Yes.
for people to
Yes.
know the truth about, our past. And
Hmm.
so I think I love books, and I think
Me too.
that that's one of the, you know, greatest blessings that come from documentation of our testimonies
Hmm.
is for other people to find peace and hope and restoration through Jesus, through this tool called a book,
Amen.
and I just love it. I just love it. I know we shared a lot of things that have been very, very heavy. And I'm glad you're on the other side of that, Jenny, and helping other people. I know there's just this is a huge topic. And I think really this is a great place to start if you're in that position. Um, would you say that the healing groups are a little different for people that have had that type of experience? Or do you think that post abortion is post abortion? Of course, there's a couple of little things that are different about it, but the shame, the guilt, the regret, it's all there,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think that if you're in that position, you know, find post abortion healing
Yes.
biblically based in your area, and that's a great starting point for you. Would you
Absolutely.
say so, Jenny?
Definitely. What I think underlines like even our first few sentences in our chat today, is as many women as I've had the honor of walking side by side with through Bible studies and through healing curriculum.
Yeah,
To this date, at least as of today, I haven't had anyone come through with the medically advised story. And so if there's anyone, listening to Polly's
yeah,
podcast here, if that's your story and you feel like you don't fit
yeah,
anywhere, you don't know where you fit, I'm sure most people are familiar with the grief model, how we
yeah.
generally need to walk through denial and
Uh-huh.
anger and forgiveness and
Yeah,
acceptance, and you kind of, work your way around that cycle of grief. Um, what I've found, and I have read every single Bible study and book on the topic of abortion healing, especially as I was writing my book.
yeah,
And regardless of what curriculum you may find through your internet search or whatever, you really want to make sure that they have all of those key components in them
yeah,
because that's biblical. I mean, we have
yes.
to get out of denial before, we can
Hmm.
even hold hands with Jesus and partner
Yeah,
in the journey. Unresolved anger is a huge blockade for a lot of people in
yeah,
progressing in their healing. We obviously spend a lot of time with women identifying and learning how to forgive, not just themselves, but all the people who were involved directly
yeah.
and indirectly.
That's
Um,
right.
Myself included, a lot of people were angry at the medical establishment
Hmm.
for telling them lies or misleading them.
Hmm.
People are actually angry with their biological or their parents.
Yeah,
Um, because in situations where you never felt like you could go talk to your parents about an unexpected pregnancy, their parents actually had a little bit of a role in that and maybe not being approachable or being
yeah,
safe, for them to come in and talk to them and maybe choose life. So we focus a lot on figuring out who we really need to forgive, biblically forgive.
yeah,
But then a lot of women also get stuck saying, okay, well, I've forgiven all these people. I've done all my homework. I've done all my Bible study. I have prayed through this. I've journaled through this, but
yeah,
I can't forgive myself.
yeah,
And the thing there that God had to correct me and many people who go through healing is that I don't want to offend anyone here, but who are we that we think we need to forgive ourselves if we believe that Christ has forgiven us, which he has, he gave his life
sure.
for us. It's not so much about forgiving ourselves. It's about, we're putting a roadblock there to accepting the free gift of forgiveness that Christ is
Yeah.
giving us.
Yeah.
And that can be a place where people really need to camp, and
Yeah.
keep working through it. But there are
Yeah.
other places too. Once we get past that, we also move into a big module on um, grief and mourning, because like you said, abortion leaves you with disenfranchised grief. It leaves you with grief that's not recognized, that's even stigmatized. You don't get to generally have a tombstone or a placard, or I was so blessed to be able to have my little urn of ashes.
Yeah.
For example, there wasn't a lot then when I walked through it, but now there are so many beautiful ways, including this woman I'm sitting here with today, to memorialize.
Yeah.
It's important to memorialize people we lose. All cultures in the world grieve, and all cultures in the world realize that life has value, and it helps us here in the physical world to have a place to go, or to take flowers or whatever that looks like, to have a painting from Polly
Yeah.
that honors your child's life, to have a plaque installed at the National Memorial for the Unborn or another organization like that. There's so many ways to honor your lost children nowadays that weren't there before. And the level of healing that comes from that is so powerful, that we're recognizing this was a child knit together in the womb by
Yes.
God, and that women who go on to maybe not have any more children, or maybe they deal with infertility, very common for people to think that's punishment for their abortion.
Yes.
That is not true. I'm here to tell you,
Yeah.
but
Not true.
not true. And
Yeah.
I just lost my train of thought again, Polly. Here we go.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
We were talking about different ways to memorialize and
Oh, yes.
our children, and just taking that step, not only for your child but also for yourself,
Yeah.
to move past that cycle that Jenny was talking about and finally get to the other side, which is typically referred to as acceptance. And
Yes.
so yes, we definitely want to be on the other side of this so that we can be a blessing to other people, blessed to
Yes.
be a blessing and to
Yes.
be able to help other people, um, number one, recognize that they've been seen, they're heard, and
Mhm.
that there is help for you in that situation. But because you brought that up, let's talk a little bit about the tribute project, Jenny.
Yes.
And even though you went through something so horrendous, and you took many steps along the way to memorialize Natty in different ways, the plaque, I think in your book somebody painted a picture of what they thought that he looked like, and that was a
Hmm.
blessing to you. Let's talk a little bit about the tribute project and what writing that letter was like for you at the stage you were in, because you had already gone through all this horrendous stuff,
Yes.
went through all the healing, and now you're working with people that are in that same position, and then you have this opportunity to write a letter, even after all the work that you've been doing, all the things you read, all the statistics, all the grief, all the knowledge you had, but then you came to have that opportunity to write that letter. What did that do for you, the just the exercise of writing the letter to Natty?
That's a good question. For me, and this is where I really want to encourage people that there's so much hope. Your journey doesn't have to be as long as me. I did not achieve I would say full healing um, for 20 years. It doesn't have to take that long. And I've sent women to your ministry to complete the card and write the letter, and then you make the beautiful painting and artistic rendering. Um, that has been hard for them. We actually watched some of the girls and were with them at a retreat setting as they did their letter, and they
Mhm.
were very tearful writing
Yeah,
those letters. But I want to let you guys know that me having the opportunity to have Polly paint my special tribute to Natty.
right back there.
Yeah,
That's Natty.
I have mine right here. I brought it to our call today. It hangs up in my closet. When I received it, I was so full of joy. And I want to let you know that if you will just commit to walking with the Father, finding a community, whether it's online, virtual, in person, whether it's a retreat or a weekly study, get the help, because the other side of healing, I can literally talk about my precious Natty and not fall to pieces on this call with you,
Yeah.
because I know I have absolute blessed assurance that I
Yes.
know where my son is,
That's
and I
right.
know that I will see him again, and I know that he is good, and I know that he's not angry with me. He's
Yeah.
completely protected. And so when I received this painting from the tribute project, I mean, it's joy. I look at it and I think, all right, Lord, I wasn't meant to be this child's mother for a long lifetime here on earth, but he's still mine. And that's where I was going when I lost my train of thought before. For any women who maybe don't go on to have what's called a rainbow baby sometimes, or, may struggle with infertility. If you have carried a child in your womb for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, my situation, delivered a baby, miscarried a baby, had a stillborn baby that you held for a time and then had to let it go, you are a mama.
That's
God
right.
chose you to be a mother. And so I pray that for you, this Mother's Day that we just passed, the Mother's Days that are going to come, count yourself a mother,
That's right.
because
Yeah.
you are and you always will be for eternity. So
Yes.
you memorialize, you take care of your heart with the Lord, walk with Jesus. I'm not talking about self-care that necessarily means just going and getting a massage or getting a pedicure. Those are good things.
Yeah.
Those are good things, but ask the Lord where He wants you to go to
Yeah.
tend your heart, and give yourself, whether it's once a year or once a month, whatever you decide on, to go ahead and touch that wound, which for me is completely scarred over. It doesn't mean there's not scars, but
Yeah.
I'm functional and I'm healed and I'm free. And now I'm in such a blessed place to be able to help others. And I
Yeah.
also want to say to people who may be feeling called to help heal other women who've been
Mhm.
through abortion, or men, you don't necessarily have to wait, and there's no perfectly healed, I'm completely done. This
Yeah.
these are
That's
layers
right.
that go on throughout our whole
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
So you can find how many people in the Bible who
Yeah.
had issues. He
Right.
called he called the people who, were kind of scratch and dent models like myself, and he did big
That's
things with
right.
them. So it's never
That's
too
right.
soon to consider getting involved. I do encourage you to get through some really basic groundwork healing,
Mhm.
and then
Right.
watch what the Lord will do as you're healing and helping others. You'll still receive. He blesses me every class. It's been
That's right.
26 years, Polly, and
Wow.
every class I get to go through with these women, he gives me something special, something new that just goes into my heart and permeates my soul and brings me more joy.
Yeah.
So um, he's just, I don't have to tell you, he's such a good father.
He really
He's
is.
such a
He
good
really
father, and
is.
don't push and force yourself or anything like that, because he's such a gentleman.
Yeah.
He will go at your own pace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jenny, when we do our exhibits with the paintings and with the
Oh.
letters, what do you hope people will glean from the letter that you wrote to Natty, and to other letters that women and men have written, to their babies in heaven? What do you hope in the big picture that you hope for them to, take away from just having the experience of reading something so personal, um,
Mm.
at our exhibits?
The most important thing has always been for them to, number one, not be alone, to know
Yeah,
that they are not alone.
yeah,
And I love that your exhibits are like out, in a public space. And there can be people who could be walking through just thinking, oh, this is an art booth. I love art. Let me stop and look and
yeah,
see. And when they realize, right, what's really going on, that these are testimonies and these are losses, and these are tributes to their
yeah,
children, I know that your ministry can catch a woman. And men have been so forgotten in this until recently. there hadn't been a lot out there for men, and now there
Yeah.
is.
Now there
So
is.
I just always picture people walking through your beautiful exhibits, and they may have pushed it down so hard that they've blocked it out. They may
Yeah.
not even remember. They could, I've worked with some women who have been through human trafficking, even
Mhm.
familial trafficking. And so those abortions, they were so young and they were forced that the trauma until they get help is so profound, they don't
Yeah.
even remember.
That's
There've
right.
been or serial abortions where there've been, one after the other. But that they would walk through there and go, oh my gosh, like this is my story.
Yeah.
And that it would prick their heart in a good way
Yeah.
and open those denial walls are so intense
Yeah.
to start letting even one tear that comes down in your exhibit. That's the beginning of this journey
It
that
is.
God has for you. And you
Yeah.
just have to take that first step and trust Him, and He will never leave your side through the healing. So please seek the counseling resources, whatever you need. But of course, Polly and I are on the same page that
Yeah.
Christ-centered is the way to complete healing and
Yeah.
restoration. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about this awesome ministry called An
Oh,
Even Place,
yeah.
by founder Mindy.
Yes.
Um, and you can help me with her last name. I'm always like, what's her last name?
It's hard. Mindy LaFoucher.
Yeah,
LaFoucher. I've heard it two ways. Mindy
yeah,
LaFoucher. Yes.
yes,
She's
yes.
amazing.
I think we say Leicestershire, but I'm sure
I think
that's not
she, I
not
think
correct.
she, no, I think she says that more. It's something between, it's Leicestershire. I gotta go back and listen to a podcast today because that's gonna drive me crazy.
Anyway, just look up the Even
I
Place.
never use her last name. She's Mindy
And
to
even,
me.
yeah, she's just Mindy, but she does virtual classes, and that's how Jenny and I met, through these online classes. But she has the, different areas, and so it's a wonderful resource, because when you go there, you go through this interview process, and then they'll find a good fit for you. So whether it has to do with more about sexual trauma, or post-abortion for men and women. In fact, Frank, my husband, just finished a class with 5 men, that which was awesome. 5 men came forward and actually completed the whole study, and that was really amazing. But we'll put all those links
Yes.
in our description of how to find an even place, and a good resource for you. And then we also want to talk a little bit more about Jenny's book called Maddie's Pawn. It's available on Amazon. And where can they find you, Jenny, if they want a little bit more, um, very specific to the type of experience that you had? Is there a place that they could reach you?
Absolutely. I have a website and I do blog
Mhm.
and other things, and I have a list of resources there as well. You're
Okay.
welcome to share. It's jennyfoster.org,
Mm-hmm.
O-R-G. And my email I give out freely to everyone and anyone. It's author@jennyfoster.org. And it's pretty easy to get my phone number from any of those places. So
Mm-hmm.
I am here to tell you I have had the honor of talking with women and who are married and unmarried who are facing the decision
That's it.
of whether or not to terminate a pregnancy
Yeah.
based on a devastating diagnosis. And um, I, if you can reach me, I will answer. Text me,
Yeah.
call me, I will get back to you, email me, and I will take all the time that I can to pray with you,
Yeah.
and to just listen. You just need someone to listen who is not judging you or
Yeah.
condemning you. And
Yeah.
I have women who contact me even after the fact. Several chose life and were able to hold their babies even for minutes or an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
And I probably should end on this. My biggest regret is that I didn't give God the chance to perhaps heal my son in utero, or even if he didn't, to have the opportunity to hold that child for moments, even if he passed during delivery, saying goodbye and being able to hold that child. My family encouraged me that that would be too dramatic, too traumatic to deliver him. That is my biggest regret. And unfortunately, my precious cousin walked through the same journey as me and delivered a son. She did carry him through to the end, Joshua, and she was able to hold him for several hours before having to say goodbye. And we've really bonded and shared so much over that. But I have never heard a woman say that she regretted carrying a child fully to term. Sometimes they're healed. Sometimes
Yeah.
they might have Down syndrome and be the most amazing child that has ever walked the earth and blesses their
Yeah.
family. And sometimes they're gone. But there is perinatal hospice out there. That's a resource I'd love for you to include, and I can send you that. Perinatal hospice will walk with you through the balance of your pregnancy and help you make arrangements as to how you want that to be handled. And if you're in a hospital setting, the space that you want and need as a family to grieve, professional photographers that come in and specialize in family photography of a lost child. People who have done that, I have just seen so much more closure and healing for them.
Yeah.
So, of course, I want to see people choose life.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and this is in your past, it's already happened. Don't let
Yeah.
the enemy continue to accuse you.
Yes.
We're all here, and Jesus is there right now to help you. Yeah, of
Wow. Wow. Jenny, thank you so much for sharing your testimony so
course.
openly and freely. I think that really is the only way people can really know that there's true resources out there, or somebody. I feel it's so generous of you to offer your number, your email, like,
Mhm.
yes, I'm here to help you. It's very specific. It's very specific. And it's
Yes.
almost like nobody else would understand.
Hmm.
Nobody else could have a clue unless they've walked that journey themselves. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for the resources, for writing Natty's Pond,
Thank
for
you.
being a participant with the Tribute Project. Thank you so much for um, allowing people to read your words to Natty. And it's just beautiful. Really, when you're on the other side of this, guys, you are so free for God to just minister through you, and you would never believe what He has in store for you just because you opened your mouth and shared your testimony. So thank you again, Jenny. Really, really appreciate you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing at An Even Place, and we really appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for what you're doing, you and your husband and your team. It's absolutely priceless. The picture's worth 1,000 words. Yeah, it really
Wow.
is. Yeah, bless you
Wow.
and thank you, friend.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we will post all the resources. And if you have any questions specifically for Jenny, you will know how to reach her. All right. Take care and have a blessed day. Whether you're on a journey of personal healing or seeking to understand the experiences of others, A Time to Speak podcast offers a space to reflect, grow, and be reminded that you're not alone. Join us next time as we embrace the power of hope, healing, and transformation that only comes through Jesus. To get involved and learn more about our project, visit us at thetributeproject.com and see how you can make a difference in the lives of others.